Oh, that stopped very suddenly.
That's a good video. I'm on it. Like, why did you choose a picture with so much hair? Jesus.
I mean, Kat, it's you. It was either one with lots of hair or one with these scalped back with no hair at all.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. That's a good video. I like that.
That's our little introduction. Prize for who can name the most guests who appeared in that video.
Oh yeah, it's like the generation game, or yeah, we had to like watch all the animals and stuff go past the conveyor belt and be like, yeah. Oh yeah. I'm trying to think who I just saw there just now. The only person I can remember was Rosalind. Actually, that's a weird one, isn't it? Well, it's not weird. She's a lovely person, but it's weird. It's weird. It's all I can remember.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was great fun. I didn't realize. I mean, I had to try and cram as many as I could, and then we could have just like 10 minutes with people, but so I've just gone for the most recent. And then I found a great picture of Billy as well. So because of tonight's guest, I put Billy in there as well as a wee nod to GlenAllachie as well. Hello, everybody at home. Thanks for tuning in to another Blether. Good evening to all you YouTubers. It seems that YouTube is taking over our Blether. There's very little on the old Facebook, but hopefully some people are watching on that as well. So hello to Dave Fackerson, hello to Dutch Jura, Steve Gibson, aka the Springer Ginger, I think would probably be the rhyming way of saying that. Peathead Ryan.
Is that named after a dog, like a Springer Spaniel dog, or is he just really jumpy and redheaded?
My first thought was Springbank.
Oh right, yeah, that's whiskey related.
Yeah. We've got Bruce Orell. Hello from Aurora, Ontario in Canada. Good evening. Wow. What time of day is it for you? Good afternoon, good morning, and good night. We'll say all three to you. Scott Matheson. We've got PX Woodhouse. Good evening to you. Some new names coming up. Great to have you guys along. Thanks very much for joining us. Dave is on the GlenAllachie 18-year-old Ruby Port handful from the distillery. He got this on the 17th of August last year on his 40th wedding anniversary.
Cool. I thought it was going to be a birthday one, but that's a wedding anniversary one. That's cool. You have to share it with your wife.
I think Dave's birthday is September, isn't it? It's not August.
Okay.
Who else have we got? We've got Dutch Jura. He's got the new Ardnamurchan Madeira. He's just letting it open up. Yeah, what a dram. It's an excellent whiskey. I think I was having it last week on the Blether, actually. We're talking about that. Scott Matheson is on the Balcones Texas single malt. Who else do we have? Steve says Billy Walker, quite appropriate for today. I thought so. That's why we threw his picture in there. Hopefully he appreciates that. And he's saying perfect mic on the Springbank. So there we go. It's 2:00 in Ontario. I'm reliably informed. And yes, David Fackerson is the 17th of September. Remember that because it's 3 days before mine. So there we go.
Well, I'll just get my diary.
Pop it in because he'll be at the distillery for a handful. And, on his birthday, that is routine. Well, I guess I better put something, and it would be rude not to have a wee GlenAllachie, wouldn't it? What am I going to go? I've got a few. I've dug out. I think I'm going to start with a port. I've got a wee tawny port handful, so I'll join you, Dave, in a port handful. This is not quite 18. This is a 10-year-old. Cask 5356. I filled this a wee while ago, 2022. Bottle number 17. I must have been in quite early for this one. I do love a port cask, if you didn't know.
You do.
Look at that.
Goodness, wow. That's just, it looks like mulled wine or sloe gin, doesn't it?
Yeah. Ridiculous.
That's pretty. I'm surprised you've still got some of that. That seems like your kind of juice.
I mean, done well. I have got like 30 bottles of GlenAllachie that are literally this full because I know that once that's finished, I'm not getting it again. And I don't like finishing bottles like that, but I should because they'll just oxidize.
Well.
But so what are you having? What are you drinking?
Okay, so we all know that my first love, and I haven't quite got into GlenAllachie because, like, I'm not a big sherry head, so I just need, and I know they're not all sherry, but I just need to find my
I can
way
just see
in.
Antea's face in the background saying, it's not all sherry.
I know. So I do have a GlenAllachie that I found that I like, and I've got that here, but I've put it quite far away. But we've gone for, I mean, I love Kilchoman, so like we've gone for that. But like I do have GlenAllachie, and it's the old boxes, and it's the wine one, and I like this one. And I liked, there was another one that I liked. I can't remember. I like the Meikle Tòir, the chinkapin one, and I thought I had a bottle of it, but I don't. So I probably just meant to buy it and didn't. So anyway,
maybe.
Long story short, I'm starting with Kilchoman, and then I do have my GlenAllachie to keep it on
You're
brand.
keeping it on track. I mean, be as well pour a pint of Tennent's as well, just to keep right on the theme.
Well, I don't have any Tennent's, unfortunately.
I'll just try and cover all bases. But let's bring Antea in. Guys at home, let us know what you're drinking, what's in your glass. Some of you already have. If you're having a dram with us tonight, let's share that love. Bring in Antea. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Oh, buenos dias.
All the better for seeing you.
I was going to say, going back, since you've got a Kilchoman already there, obviously GlenAllachie now, it'll be fun to do like a tasting with every single product that I worked with over the past 12 years in the industry. I don't think that I will make it outstanding because it's a lot of different drinks, but it'll be a fun one. So yeah, I'm probably going to try that.
You've been a couple of beers as well, haven't you? Was it Menabrea you started it?
Well, I actually started at the Scotchman Whisky Society. So yeah, a lot of single casks there. Then I moved to Diageo, and then Tennent's and Menabrea. Mm-hmm. So yeah, quite a few drinks, quite a few distilleries as well.
That's quite cool because you work with SNWS. You've got your pick of what you could pour in your tasting there. So you could have Diageo. You've got,
it's been very interesting. I think that in the first few years of me being in the industry, I've tried the most whiskies I've ever had. So a bit of a shock, cultural shock as well, as you can imagine, because I probably said it to you. When I started at the Scotchman Whisky Society, they sat me down and they were like, you don't know about whiskey. This is the way. Sat down, 5 whiskeys in front of me pretty early in the morning. I don't remember the time, but we were like, okay, let's go through it. And me used to, yes, cocktail, because I was coming from cocktail bars and mixologist, going straight into spirits. It was like, okay, and not just like 46% spirits. It was like high 60s and stuff. So I was like, okay, yeah, I need some time, but I can get used to that. And I did. So it was fun.
So you were in the bars at SMWS, were you? Yeah.
Yes, I was. I was in Queen Street, and from time to time I was going down to Leith. Then I moved to sort of like semi-ambassadorial kind of role. And then, shortly after that, well, it was like 2 years, but after that, I went to Diageo.
Awesome.
That's a pretty full journey, from cocktail to whiskey to bars to beer to brand ambassador. You've pretty much done the full trajectory of like career through whiskey.
Well, if you think about it, I've done behind the bar, then obviously sort of like stayed behind the bar at the Scotchman Whisky Society, then started to do a bit of ambassadorial things, then wholesale with Menabrea and Tennent's, well, obviously with Diageo as well, but that was more sort of like selling to bars. Then the Menabrea as well stayed into the same kind of thing, more restaurants, and after that, obviously with whiskey, it was more sort of like shops and distributors, and it's sort of like broaden up the range of customers that I worked with. It's definitely been an amazing learning curve, and I've sort of like covered most spirits. Now my boyfriend, he's taking me into all the Japanese liquors. So we now have a selection of shoshus and sakes in the house, because it's discovery day every day. So yeah, we've tried a lot of different things.
Nice. So your boyfriend's in the trade as well, but focusing on Japanese spirits, or is there more to what he does as well?
He's in hospitality, so he's a general manager, Old Pal in Edinburgh, which is a really good whiskey bar if you're in Edinburgh. So if you want to go and say hello, they've got a fair share of GlenAllachie. I don't know why. Is
that recent? Is it?
It's weird. But yeah, he's just got his WSET free for sakes. And he's doing multiple competitions on sort of like Japanese spirits. So he's right into that mindset now. So instead of talking about Brewers Yeast, we're now talking about koji. We're talking about rice fermentation, polishing, and, a completely different sort of things. And also we're going to Japan in June. So that will be another learning curve.
That's amazing.
Right.
Will that be your first time to Japan?
Yes.
I'm so jealous. It just looks amazing. It just looks like such a opposite. Like you've got this crazy busy like lights and cities and mental sort of crazy vending machines and crazy toilets, and then you've got these beautiful hilly farmland kind of blushing trees. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got really two sides of that country, and obviously I've just seen it from the books, TV. So I'm really looking forward to experience it. I think it'll be good because obviously, I worked in London, and London was a bit too much for me because I've grown up into a small sort of like village in Italy. So, I know how different things can be, and I really look forward to do a couple of days in a big city, then moving out in the countryside, then another couple of days there, and sort of like hop on and off the train and experience was out there. But yeah, you're right. It does have that sort of like eclectic and then very traditional that is sort of like comes together in the one country.
Amazing. That's going to be a lot of fun.
I wanted to say the color of your Tony Port handfill is absolutely amazing. Yes.
It's color.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. I mean, I'm trying to showcase, get the light right on it. It's just phenomenal.
And I am right with you on the port casks. I love port casks, those fruits. I think I remember talking about it when we talked about the Kilchoman port cask back 2 or 3 years ago.
I think I was drinking that when we had the Blether because I was sitting outside. It was that fine, and I had the port cask, and it's so good.
Yeah.
I very rarely come across. I prefer ruby port to tawny port, particularly when it comes to GlenAllachie. But anything
that seems to have quite of a sort of like bright color for a tawny port. So it must be like a younger one than your usual sort of like brownish one that sort of like get into that sort of like vintage color. Because I had one in Denmark last week, and it was a tawny port as well, slightly older. And that one was on the sort of like more copperish side.
Yeah, because I've got one here, so that's a port pipe as well.
Yeah.
So that's more as a 13-year-old, but it's an older bottle. That's 2019, and this is 2022. So who was it? Stephen Gibson. He was asking what's the finish time on the port. So distilled in August 2011. So it won't, Billy was kind of started re-racking in 2017, 18?
Yes, so I think that the bulk of the work has been done 2018 for the core range and some single casks. So, it's just like, I guess that one was bottled in 2022, you said?
Yeah. So
Probably
at the most
a
4
couple of
years.
Yeah, probably a couple of years, but it could be more. By the color, it looks like it will be more.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Good evening, Lindsay. Lindsay's watching on Facebook, coming in to say hello.
Hi, Lindsay.
Lindsay
I mean,
likes
you
to
need to get
talk.
it on because he'll be amazing at it. Such great knowledge, and he's such a lovely guy. So yeah, you're gonna have a great time with him.
Well, do you know? Let's get him on then. Like, I will track him down. I will do. What is it? What's that film with Liam Neeson? I will find you. Sounds good.
Please don't kidnap him. A bit extreme.
Trust me, we'll notice right away. We need him.
Yeah. Yeah. What we need to do, Antea, is get his email address and phone number from you, and then Kat can just hound him until he succumbs.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Excellent. So for the guys who don't know, who are watching, Lindsay, who's said hello on Facebook, is a warehouse manager.
Yes.
Yeah, warehouse manager is his title. Has been with Billy since back in the Ben Reef days. He's been there helping him with the casks and rolling out all the samples and doing all the groundwork. So he has a large part to say. Yeah, a large part to say in what goes into the bottles, I guess, and when casks are ready as well. So if there's a cask in the warehouse, Lindsay knows where it is and probably how long it's been there and when it's going to be ready. So.
Totally. And
cool.
I love talking to him because you're like looking at a cask and you can ask him, how long has it been in the cask? And without even looking spreadsheets or going into the system, it's like that one, we re-rack it with that lot. So that would have been like 3 years. And you're like, how can you remember that? We've got thousands and thousands of casks and he just does it like that. It's amazing.
Do you know what that reminds me of? So I always think of Billy Walker as like the Dumbledore of whiskey because he's like this magical wizard who's like been around in whiskey forever. So Lindsay's like Mr. Ollivander that knows where all the wands are in the store. Like the cask just finds him. Like so this is making like GlenAllachie seem more and more like Harry Potter. I absolutely love it.
So which character would Antea play?
I'm definitely Hermione.
That's a really good question, though. Who would you be? Like, you'd have to be like, I don't know, because you've got your cats. So, like Hermione's got a cat, hasn't she?
I'm not sure.
I have to think about it.
Mr. No, I was going to say Mr. Tumble. It's not Mr. Tumble. It's Mr. something, isn't it?
Name the cat. Yeah, it's. Oh, that's terrible. I don't remember that. I mean, I'm a grown-up. I probably shouldn't know these things.
If you're at home watching and you tune in for some whiskey chat, can you please give us the name of the Hermione's cat so we can get back to it? It's Mr. something. I'm sure it's Mr. something.
Yeah, no, I do think you're right. But yeah, that's very cool. And now I'm just trying to figure out who everybody at GlenAllachie is in terms of Harry Potter. Because I'm already thinking Juliet. I'm thinking Brenda. I'm trying to get the whole.
I will take pictures and put the names next to sort of like the characters. I will get to that because it's going on in my head as well. And I'm like, I know the characters from Harry Potter, but I watched them all in Italian, so there will be different names in English. So I'll need to make sure that they're correct. So I'll send it to you.
I would love to watch Harry Potter in Italian because everything sounds better in Italian and also more urgent because it's so fast and like there's a lot of hand movements. And I thought this was a stereotype until I hung out with Italians for a while. It's not a stereotype. Everything's so animated, but it's fantastic because you just get drawn in. You're like, I don't know what you're saying, but it sounds really exciting. I love it.
I mean, we live on coffee, so our lives are like times 10. It's like when you're listening to 100%. WhatsApp messages and it's just like that's it. That's all with an Italian basically.
And it's strong coffee drank at appropriate times of the day because I learned the hard way about coffee drinking. So and I'm not very good at coffee. But
anyway, I wanted to say you mentioned
what are you on tonight?
and I actually have a dram of Meikle Tòir chinkapin tonight.
What's that one?
This is obviously one of the first ones of Meikle Tòir that I've tried, and that was back in 2023. Lee was with Billy Walker at the Glasgow Whisky Festival, and she just literally grabbed me and she was like, "You need to come and try this." And I absolutely fell in love with it. And I was just like, you know what? I need to have that one tonight. It was also one of the reasons why when I got the offer for GlenAllachie, I was like, yes, it's meant to be. Because I'm obviously into my smoky whiskies. I love that part of the flavor that can be sort of like changed by the different maturation, and it comes out at different stages depending by the maturation. And when I tried this one, I was just like, wow, can't believe it's not even Islay Peat. And I was just like, yeah, that's me now. I can work for a Speyside distillery. They've made it.
They found your connection. They drew you in. That's a nice story, though. Like, yeah, I love that. That, you know, the kind of big Islay smoke, which are kind of like, I don't know, like your wheelhouse, but you managed to kind of reach into Speyside, kind of coming through that direction. It's quite a nice, it's quite a nice journey, and it's such a nice whiskey.
It is, and that obviously goes without saying that, you know, I always drank unpeated whiskies, but I always had that thing for the smokiness. It's because I started with smoky whiskey back in Italy. Obviously not to the knowledge that I had now. So I will come across the standard whiskies that you have in a pub, in an Irish pub in Italy. But yeah, that's always sticked with me. It was just like, yeah, that's stuck. It's there, and it's always going to be there. You're always going to look for that flavor. But I would say that, you know, sherries have never been my biggest thing. But in some ways, when I started at GlenAllachie, I started obviously revisiting a whole new way of discovering sherry whiskey. And it was like, yes, we've got single casks that are just PX or Oloroso, but we also have, you know, our core range, which is a multitude of casks, a marriage of casks that is coming together. So yes, there is a great percentage of Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez, but it's very well managed, very well blended, thanks to Billy. So it's pleasant, it's not overpowering. I think it's because I've been, you know, into wines for most of my life. You know, that sort of like over maturation of sherry, it just doesn't sit well with me. But he never does that. For some reason, I've never tried GlenAllachie with, you know, that oversharing element. And I always appreciate that. He's got amazing cask management, obviously, thanks to Lindsay as well. That keeps him right. Or the other way around, I don't know. Not here to say, but yeah, it's been amazing, and it's great to, you know, rediscover almost something that I've put aside because I was like, oh, you know, another sherry cask, I'm not keen, and yeah, finding something that I could actually enjoy. And I've got a few bottles, and one of the ones that I'm still enjoying so much is the 8 years old, because it's got that sort of like fresher element. And the 12 years old sort of like rolls a little bit onto the older whiskey, but with that same fresh element into it that I appreciate.
Yeah.
So maybe
and the 8-year-old
back, and we'll see how you go on.
Do you know, part of it's psychological, and my biggest lesson learned was, and I've told the story a million times, was when I did Mike brought in samples with the blind tasting. Because sometimes when I see a dark color, even when I saw your beautiful ruby whiskey, straight away my head's like, oh my gosh, that's just going to taste like that, you know, brown sugar, like that really heavy sherry. That's just not my palate. So I know it is, sometimes it's psychological, because I see this row of beautiful dark colors and straight away my brain's like, I don't think you're going to like that. But I know I like the 12, I know I like the 8, and I've tried, I love the chinkapin. There's a Scotch oak one that I really liked. So I just need to, I'm going to go over to GlenAllachie and just try some whiskies and just break myself out of this psychological block that I don't like any sherry. I don't like petrol Heminette.
It's Go on. This one's quite tart on the palate. It's quite nice, kind of raspberry, kind of bittersweet tartness going on there. It's not that sweet hit that you'd expect. As most people look at the color, or a lot of people look at color and think it's going to be syrupy or treacly or really sweet or raisin, abound. But no, it's quite tart. It's quite fresh. It's nice.
Yeah, you can't really judge the book by the cover with Billy. Sometimes it's just unexpected flavors, which is surprising, and people still appreciate that. I think that one of the ones that I was surprised of was the Spanish oak. Working with virgin oak, it's quite unusual. There are some virgin oak around, but predominantly American. We started to see some chinkapin with a couple of distilleries. But when it comes to virgin oak, he's like on it the whole time. He gets to try everything that is out there. So the Spanish oak, I had expectation, but it definitely surpasses it, because it's almost like, having fruits into the whiskey, almost like it had wine in it before without the tannin, but with a lot of spices in the end. So it's just like dry fruitiness, which is what I want usually from a port or from a wine casks, and that one was absolutely astonishing.
Yeah, they've got such a range, as you say. I'm just. We're talking chinkapin. Steve Gibson mentioned, I think it was when you showed the Meikle Tòir, the chinkapin was Billy's favourite of the Meikle Tòir range, if I remember right. And I think was it the first, or it was very, very early on when GlenAllachie started doing handfuls. I think one of the first was a chinkapin.
Okay.
And that's what opened my eyes to the cask type. And I remember thinking, as I probably still think now, is that chinkapin's probably always been around. It's just been lumbered in with American oak ex-bourbon. We never really had the depth of knowledge or the inkling to learn that this was a whole new species or a whole different species of American oak. And it's been really fun.
It's Missouri, isn't it? It's specific to like the Ozarks and Missouri. That's chinkapin, isn't it?
Yes, it's also sort of like sourced in other areas, but I think predominantly in Missouri. So yeah, it's just so different, and it can grow in the same forest as, traditional American oak, but you just get these completely different flavors. And I would imagine, the bourbon producer sort of like filling in a cask 3 years later, 2 years later, taking it out and be like, oh, this is different. Not really knowing why. Obviously,
and I wonder how many single casks and over here have gone that way, where people think, well, this is giving us something really different. Let's do that as a single cask or a bottle, a handful or something special. And it's just been labeled as an ex-bourbon American oak, but it's
especially when it's like for longer maturation, because it's like, yes, it's a first fill bourbon, so you can go on for like forever. And and after that, you find loads of caramel, balsamic notes, spices. What is this? Delicious, obviously, but it's not what you expect. You don't have the traditional vanilla. You don't have any sort of like tropical fruits or sort of like the creaminess of it. It just goes in completely different directions.
Yeah, do you know, you're right. I think that's the biggest difference. You're not getting those big hits of tropical fruits. It's just like it's a completely different spectrum of like almost like herbal kind of, and then you got like that balsamic kind of, and the spices coming through. It's just like completely different. It's like a whole new kind of whole new oak, a whole new world.
It really is.
I'm really disappointed that I don't have this bottle. I honestly thought I owned a bottle of it, and I don't have it. Either that, I've drank it. It must have been a good night because I don't remember doing it. But
you and Dave Fowley are in the same boat, Kat, because Dave had a bottle in his shop and he regrets not buying it as well.
Oh.
Dave also thinks you should do a GlenAllachie panto with all the characters of GlenAllachie, which I think is pretty cool.
Do that. I'll start working on that. Tomorrow is going to be a Canva day where I take pictures of every single one in the distillery.
GlenAllachie the musical. How cool does that sound?
Oh, let's get that off the ground. That's amazing.
That has to happen.
I am not up for singing, guys. I cannot do that. Maybe with a few of these, but I don't think that anybody will want to hear that.
They can have whiskey while they do.
Well, I mean, like, if Macallan can do Cirque du Soleil, then GlenAllachie can definitely do the sound of GlenAllachie. Like, that's amazing.
I would hire somebody to be my lookalike for that, for sure. No, but yeah, there's a lot of fun things that have happened in Speyside over the past few months. That one was definitely like a massive one. I remember seeing pictures and hearing about it, and it looked has been amazing.
It looked fantastic. I do wish I'd gone to that. Like, it looked so much fun. Talking of all things Speyside, you've got Spirit of Speyside coming up. You must be flat out getting ready for that, let alone trying to organise a panto and Harry Potter themed days. Although, great idea for next year's Spirit of Speyside.
Sorry to interrupt. We're really well organized, so we've done a lot of the legwork already. So we're pretty solid for the week of Spirits of Speyside. Got loads on. The distillery will be going through some works, and we won't be all required on site. So we're going to be off site in the shops and sort of like staying local to do tastings, barrel tops. So if anybody listening is going to be in Speyside for the Speyside Spirit of Speyside week, come and find us because we're going to be around and we're going to have loads of beautiful drams. And I heard what the Spirits of Speyside bottling is going to be. So you want to be at the distillery for sure. 100%.
That sounds intriguing. I bet some of the guys watching are probably heading over for it, I'm sure.
100%.
I haven't booked into anything yet, but I've maybe a bit late off the wagon. I think probably everything's booked up by now.
Jeremy is normally going there. He's asking you to spill the beans, Antea, on the cask. No.
All happening.
Stick around for an hour, Jeremy. We'll have another couple of drams in there. We'll see what we can do. Hamish Malcolm is saying hello from Inverness. Hello, Hamish. How are you? Great to have you along. Dave Fowley, who we've mentioned before, he works for the Isle of Skye distillers, who start whiskey production this year. So that's very exciting to hear. Can't wait to see what's going on there, Dave. Potential future guest on the Blether if you're up for it. Talk about Isle of Skye. We had the Isle of Tyree guys last.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Do we follow each other on Instagram? Your name's familiar, and if not, I'm going to find you because you're going on my list now too. I'm just creating a hit list while we're chatting. Lindsay, okay, carry on.
Alan Smith is saying, evening all. I think Antea did a Kilchoman tasting he went to a few years back. I think there's a pretty
probably possible, yeah.
Confident suggestion there. And I've also discovered that the cat who I was thinking of from Harry Potter isn't Mr. something. It's Mr. Filch was Mrs. Norris's owner, but that's not Hermione's cat. Hermione's cat.
Right. No, I saw Mrs. Norris's name coming through, and I was like, oh yeah, there is another cat, but yeah, it's not Hermione's one. It's I mean, it's not important that I know this, but I'm just going to look it up right now. I can't.
What else have we got in the? We've got people. Just Stephen is saying you were in Dunfermline doing a tasting as well.
I was,
I mean, we
yeah.
could probably just
Years
list
ago.
towns that you've probably been there doing a tasting for either GlenAllachie or Kilchoman.
Yeah.
But you'll be getting back to your full role or your intended role now because you've got Blair Sterrick's been announced, hasn't he?
Yes. So Blair has now started, so he's looking after the UK. And yeah, I'm going back to Europe because my role is now European sales manager, which obviously includes a lot of traveling. Yeah, I've started traveling already. Was it last week? Last week I was in Denmark. But I've been sick in between, so I've lost track of time. I was in Denmark. I'm going back to Denmark next week. And then March is basically fully booked. So being in between two roles, it was going to be a bit of a struggle. But really enjoyed, getting in touch again with all the customers that I've worked with, like you guys. And, being out and about in Edinburgh and Glasgow, getting to see bars, meeting the new bar staff, because obviously in a year bar staff has changed, and in the main bars you might find people that you never come across before. So it's been really good fun, bit nostalgic as well, but I really enjoyed it. I love travel around Scotland and obviously talking to people because it's my job. So it's been difficult obviously because of the situation, but has been good to do it for sure, to reconnect with so many people.
100%. It's great to have you back on the radar again, just to chat. I know it's been brief, but it'd be good to see you out in Europe. And we've got Whiskey Tales, who's just commented, hello from Germany. So he works for, or she works for, it doesn't specify. They work for a German distributor of GlenAllachie. So maybe fresh. You will meet at some point in the future. We don't have a name there, just Whiskey Tales. So, and Hamish has said, Antea, he's Russell Nelson Edwards' friend from Inverness.
Right.
And he would always leave Kilchoman until the last hour of a festival, by which time he's not making much sense.
Say hello to him. It's been a while since I've seen him.
Russell is on. Russell Brinklow is coming on to say hello. So hello, Russell. Hope you're well.
Hi, Russell.
His team stole a couple of points from my team last night, so I'm not just in the best speaking terms with Russell.
Is this football?
It's football.
I guess so. That's what my face went like. What is happening? It's like golf and football. For me, it's just like.
Yeah, don't be coming on here with your football chat, Russell.
That's all. I wasn't going to dwell on it. I was just saying. Major Nuts on saying good evening. Hello to you. Steve's got a question for you, Antea. I met a very knowledgeable young girl on your team when I was in Islay last October in the Bowmore Hotel with her family. I'm sure she is from Orkney, but forgot her name.
Anya Hall. Yes. She's in the marketing team. She's very knowledgeable, lovely person, and she does quite a lot of our shows. She likes to be out and about, so whenever she can, she is sort of like jumping on. And she will actually be in Rome at the Rome Whisky Festival at the end of the month. So yeah, you might see her around in other shows in the UK soon, but otherwise she's usually at the office or at the distillery.
Nice.
So do you prefer heading back to like Italy for shows, or is that a little bit, do you prefer being out away from kind of like your home country? What's easier, or what's better for you?
I mean, obviously, there's not, when I'm back home, there's not the language sort of like barrier. And in some ways, although I've been here for 13 years now, it still sort of like comes easier. I like all festivals, but I think I prefer the ones in sort of like the Nordics a bit more. Sorry about the rest. It's just, I think it's like more civilized in a way. And that's what I like. I like the order. I like, sort of like nicer setups and all that. But I'm lucky that I'm working with really good distributors, and, you always have, great team around you that are sort of like supporting you over the festivals, and, they're really knowledgeable. They love the brand. It's incredible how much, sort of like support we get from distributors that are abroad, that have visited a few times, and how much they love the brand, how much they love the whiskies, and how much they follow. Sometimes, we might not talk for a few weeks, and they know about, something that happened at the distillery from social media, or they talk with a friend that was at the distillery, and, they're always in the loop. They're always sort of like connected. I just think it's great. But yeah, I would say probably, in the north, it's probably where I found my sort of like sweet spot. But last year I've been to a show in Malta, which was really surprised, because obviously it was winter, but it was still kind of warm. And, you'll think with 20 degrees, 25 degrees, people are not going to be drinking whiskey. And we were like in this beautiful hall with basically every single bottle of, Speyside, Islay whiskies, and, Highlands, all of the single malts that I could think of. And I was like, it's incredible how sort of like closer you feel when you're at these events. So there's always like connection with customers that are there, or sort of like a sharing passion. They tell you what they like, what they have in the house, how many times they've visited the distillery, and then obviously you tell them what you know about the product, and that sort of like is the perfect recipe. I am getting really sort of like annoyed of me moving my hands. So if you see me doing this, this is because I'm trying to stop.
That's fine. I move my hands around a lot. Every time somebody takes a picture of me from doing a tour or something, my hands are always like that in front of my face, like a little wee T-Rex. I can't not move my hands around, but it's all good. As I was on your point there, I always think it's amazing. Like when people come into the distillery, like from all around the world, and they're so pleased to either meet somebody from their brand or finally visit the distillery, and like that sense of like community and like sort of family, like, they feel like they're kind of bought into this, like the family of the brand. Like I love that. It's just, I never get bored of that. I'm like, to find these little bottles of whiskey just disappearing, like appearing all around the world. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. And I love this little wee corner in Speyside, or
Yeah, absolutely. I love how much sort of like Henfield means to people. So obviously we've got Henfields at the distillery. We've now have one or two at the time. And, in my last trip, people were showing me, I've been to the distillery. I still got this at home. It's like a souvenir. It's almost like a little treasure that they're bringing back. And when they want to be back there with their mind, it's going back into it for one more and one more. I absolutely adore it. And on top of that, obviously, we're lucky that we have Juliette. Juliette has been around Europe for the past few years with the brand. So she knows most of the people that will go at shows. She's an additional link that we have at GlenAllachie, another recognized face, familiar face that, people associate with the brand. So I think that, definitely the distillery does give that sort of like feeling. And also it's a smallish distillery. There's not that many of us working between sort of like production and the sales team, marketing team. So, it's still very contained. And we do a lot of different jobs. So one day, might be in a show in the UK, or can be in Europe, or, Asia, or somewhere else. So we try to sort of like be a team as much as possible and help each other
I have
out.
got a GlenAllachie. I've got a GlenAllachie water jug behind me because me and Juliet did the National Whisky Festival in Aberdeen, and she fell in love with the little green Glengarry jugs. So she came over and did a non-negotiable swap. She's like, "I'm having yours. You're having mine." I was like, "That's okay. Let's swap." She is fantastic, and you're right. She's so recognizable. Like, just everyone knows her. But I think it's because A, she's so fantastic at her job, and B, just because she's like great to be around. But that's the lovely thing about GlenAllachie. Like you say, it's a very small team, and I sometimes forget how small production is. You know, you're not churning out massive volume. I think because you have such a range of releases, you think, oh wow, this must be quite a big distillery, but it's really not by any means. Which is testament to quality over quantity, if anything.
I think the capacity is there to churn out a lot, isn't it? But it's a conscious decision to say no, we're not. We're going to stick to what we want and what we know we not can handle. Because I'm sure you, as a team, you could handle more, but it's what we want to work with, and that ensures that the quality is there rather than the quantity. I think as well we had a kind of you guys. It is something I've never seen another distillery or another company do. As far as I've been in the shop, is come out, reach out to guys like us and say, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What would you like to see more of? What would you like to see less of? And I think, there was a period when GlenAllachie was coming out with quite a lot of series, like wine series, Virgin Oak series, and there's quite a lot going on. And kind of the general consensus was, whoa, we're just, it's a little bit overwhelming with another GlenAllachie. And you guys took it on board. Billy took it on board and said, well, let's rein it in a little bit. We'll do less releases. Let's focus on kind of core stuff. And you do notice that people are more willing to buy if there's less of it. Because, I started off getting every handful, every special release, and it just becomes impossible to keep up.
We have a very wide range, that's for sure. Yeah. And that is a testament of Billy's creativity. I've never seen somebody working so hard and, sampling so many different casks. Sometimes in the office, he brings samples and makes us taste it as well, just to see, which one we like better, what is done sort of like bear in a batting or in the other, and see sort of like the total outcome of who likes bear which one. And I think it's obviously there's been a lot of work that has been done at the beginning, acquiring a distillery and getting 50,000 casks on site at the same time. It's quite unusual. You don't hear that many stories like these days. You hear more stories about, a distillery being opened up somewhere and, rightly so, doing their own thing, but taking their own time. With GlenAllachie was slightly a different story. It was like working on this cask and finding the profile that Billy wanted to showcase with this beautiful, oily, fruity, rich, predominantly bourbon matured liquid that we had in the warehouses. So I think that he was telling me that in the first few days at the distillery, he sampled like 400 casks a day, which is, it's a tough job.
That's intense, isn't it?
I mean, to most people at festivals, they'll be like, after 8 drams, you might not feel, the full complexity of the whiskey because your palate is tired. Imagine after 400. I mean, it's definitely, it's a matter of expertise. You cannot go around that, just winging it. It's completely different.
I imagine a lot of that is just nosing, though. You couldn't taste them all, surely.
I imagine a bit of spitting as well, because it's
maybe spitting.
Could be a well. But wine trade teaches us, probably not as well known in Scotland, that we can taste but not drink. So that works out quite all right as well. But yeah, obviously that was a work of double maturation, finishes, and a lot of innovation as well. So when something was ready, it was ready to go. And maybe sometimes we found quite a lot at the same times, because I heard that before. But he's definitely sort of got the timing, and he's planned well for at least the first half of the year, as far as I know. So it's a little bit of a slower burner. We've got everything that everybody wants, but it's going to be taking some time. And things have gone really well for us over the past year, and considering how the whiskey trade is going. So it's good to
I think it's an absolute testament to the company that they take on board concerns and they listen and they can adapt. And even before that, having the idea to go and ask what's working, because sometimes, especially in bigger companies or conglomerates or whatever, they don't have that connection. It's just it's all about numbers. And I think it's fantastic. It's the first time anyone's actually come out to the retailers and stuff and say, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing it well? And if not, what can we improve on? And I just thought it was fantastic. And asking us to be honest and saying that we're not perfect. Tell us, and taking it on board. We have Juliet in. Good evening, Juliet. Hello. She's watching on Facebook.
Hello. Did you hear us say nice things about you, or did you miss all that?
I was
go back 5 minutes if you missed it.
I think her ears started burning. She thought, "Oh, Antea's on. I'm going to jump on." We were saying lovely things about you, Juliet, and especially I was just going to say, I was lucky enough to sit next to Juliet at the Burn Supper at the Marcliffe, and she did not ply me with alcohol. She did not get me drunk.
No, she's a very responsible person, so I don't believe that.
It was. I know. I never say yes to more drink being poured into my glass. I do think I started the ball rolling with a wee bottle of Loch-Lee on the table. So, Jeremy's asked Lindsay, and we can ask you the same question: how many of the 50,000 plus casks have you taken samples from?
I have no idea.
I wonder if Lindsay's got an answer. I would say Lindsay's probably done all 50,000 of them at one point.
Probably, yes. I mean, I know that the older stock is definitely under sort of like review more constantly than the younger stock. But yeah, it was sort of like, I think it was like more structure towards, we want to do a 12 years old. Let's work on the 12 years old. And then let's decide if, it's going to be good liquids to be part of the core range, or if we want to move it into another direction, we want to age it for longer. Same thing for the other sort of like ages. And I think that, from that, they sort of like tasted most of the samples, most of the casks that are at the distillery, but putting it down to a number, it will be basically impossible. I think that only Lindsay and Billy know the answer. But one thing that I wanted to say before I forget is that in terms of like, as you said, having that connection and asking for feedback, I think obviously something like that can only come from independent businesses. And it's something that obviously Lee has done well over the years, getting that connection going and making sure that customers were happy and satisfied with the liquid and reporting back. But also is something that, it's at the core of GlenAllachie, trying, innovating, bringing something new. So, when you get so many new things out, yes, you can go by the numbers, but, until a certain extent, you cannot have that realistic view of what is happening without connecting. And as I was saying, when you approach corporate, numbers are what drives most of the sort of like reporting. Well, when we're sitting for a meeting, it's like probably 4 or 5 hours of us talking about, this customer and that customer, and this release has been well appreciated. This one is sort of like moving a little bit slower. What can we do? How can we help? And it's almost like a forum. We just share and talk and come up with what is needed, and that's why the feedbacks are so important. And in more structured businesses, something like that, it's difficult going through the ladder and getting these information, getting it filtrated through hundreds of people is basically impossible. And I've seen it with bigger businesses that I worked with, which is why it's nice to work for independent distilleries, because you might have a say on something like should we postpone this release? Should we do sherry or port single cask? These things that after releasing maybe another 5 different limited editions can help you sort of like making customers happy and letting them achieve what they want, because some people want to get all of the bottles from GlenAllachie, and really flattered about that. I was talking to a gentleman in Denmark, and he showed me his sort of like men cave, and he had, I think, probably about 200 different bottles of GlenAllachie, every single 21 years old, every single wine release, every single wood release. And obviously, these are the people that you want to make happy, but you also want to make people happy that are just buying their 12 years old, when they finish their bottle, and making sure that, they know what's in there. They know, how it's been matured, and they know the production back at Chivas days. Well, the production, nowadays at GlenAllachie it's fairly different. So all these little things is about transparency, and we're trying to be big advocates about that.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because obviously you've got experience as a brand ambassador, and you are working at even though your title's like sales manager, it's more ambassadorial work that you're doing. So to have that opportunity to sit in a room, like a forum, you're calling it, like to talk for like 4 or 5 hours and say, look, I've been traveling to this country, this country, this country, this is working, this needs a little bit more pushing, like, this doesn't seem to be taking. But to have that, like, listen to, take it on board, like, it's obviously going to make all the effort you're going to seem worthwhile. Whereas as a big company, your brand ambassador probably just said to trade shows, they might have this sort of input, but it maybe doesn't have the same impact as it would immediately in an independently owned distillery. So yeah, from your point of view, it must be quite a rewarding kind of a sort of give and take experience, which is quite, it's interesting to hear.
It really is. And especially working with distributors when there's like limited editions for themselves that they want to bottle, and talking about the new releases, that's probably one of the most sort of like interesting thing about the job, getting their strategies up and running and bringing in what you can sort of like collect from every single one of the customers from the UK, from Asia, from America, because at some point these feedbacks, these are trends, are going to impact them as well. And yeah, it might get lost with somebody that is moving around quickly from one trade show to the other and not connecting to the retailer that actually speak to customers on a regular level, on a regular day, and on sort of like a professional level. And yeah, it's working out fine just now. So we'll leave it as is.
If it's not broken,
don't fix it. Totally. But as you were saying, Mike, the production has changed quite a bit. So Obviously, in terms of like capacity, the distillery, a maximum capacity was about 4 million liter, which I think it was what Chivas was producing back in the days. Since Billy took over, he basically restructured the old production to move into one shift a day, rather than 7 days a week, 5 days a week, and basically maximizing the fermentation, which, as you probably remember, is the part of production that I love the most. For some reason, everybody loves the still. I love the bubbling of the yeast in the wash. But that was like like a couple of days back at Chivas, and it's now 163 hours at GlenAllachie. So it's a massive, massive improvement in terms of like the quality of the spirit at the end of the day. And you can see that already in Meikle Tòir, because it's a 5 years old whiskey. And that was like Billy's baby from day one. And we're going to see it with GlenAllachie within the next 3, 5, 10 years and so on. So obviously there's definitely going to be a slight changeover in the product, and you probably have had the product in the shop from the early days, and you've seen the old 12 years old bottle when it was still quite bourbony and quite light. I remember getting a bottle and being like, oh, this is really good. I really like this. And I think I still have one of the little miniatures hanging around in the house. And it just changed so much. You get a 12 years old now, you put like a 2019 versus a 2021 even, or even going to 2023, and you get a completely different product. So there's the crafty side of things, the change, the development, and that part that otherwise you won't see.
Yeah, and I think people enjoy that, and it's something that probably GlenAllachie has in common with Kilchoman in that sense, is that people who've been fans from the start are able to follow the journey from not inception, because obviously GlenAllachie was on the go since 1967, but certainly as a single malt, people have been able to follow the evolution of it, and that draws people in, and people kind of get excited about.
Yeah,
I've seen that and seen where it's gone to, and I mean, you've been lucky enough to work with Kilchoman as well, and that. I went to visit those guys over in, I think it was early 2016, and they were talking about 78-hour fermentations, and that was quite new back then. That was something that, that long fermentation was something that people were kind of just starting to grasp. But you guys, you've ramped up 160 up to 180 hours or something ridiculous like that, which is phenomenal.
I think it's
Sorry, on you go. I was going to ask. I mean, it's the overlap. My internet's pants. It's like watching Eurovision. So, like, I mean, I'm a big fermentation fan as well. And I know with your longer ferments, you're capturing more of your esters to bring forward more of your fruit flavors. But like with 163 hours, you're going like way past that. You're kind of like going into like the sort of the new realm of what's the keynote you're trying to pick up there, because I guess like your yeast has all died back, we're kind of getting into that sort of like that bacterial input and stuff as well, but like what's the cutoff between like fruit and flavors and then like just funk and weird notes, or are you trying to capture that as well? I'm just interested as a geek, like what does your 163 bring?
It's not like, the funkiness that you can get from rums. It's not that sort of like wild fermentation that just takes you to a completely different level, and it starts to extrapolate things that you might not expect in the glass. Obviously, we've got cell-controlled fermentation, stainless steels wash. So you're getting sort of like the upper level of that fruitiness, that honey, that it's very well sort of like structured into the GlenAllachie profile. And yeah, it's, it's still kind of young. I've tasted some new make directly, from the stills, and that is just like a candy, or one of these sort of like honey candy with some sort of like orange blossom, and it's fruity as well. It does have a little note of malt here and there, but otherwise it's just fruit. It's a big juicy liquid, and I think that's what sort of like it's going to even support more the sherry character of the whiskey at GlenAllachie. So yeah, watch that space for the first 10 or 12 years old. That might come at some point. But obviously, I think that it'll be like a big moment, because I remember, being told stories about the past, future, present release that Billy released for his 50th anniversary in the business. And that one was obviously unbelievable how well received the peated range was, and how much people had to say about, what it will become Meikle Tòir peated. And yeah, I think it's going to be something like that. I mean, in my mind, it's going towards that, and yeah, it's going to blow people's minds.
That's fab. It's exciting.
It's cool. And not afraid to put that young age statement on it. 4 years old for the future release, and then 5 years old as a core release. I think that's I think fermentation is such a big part of the flavor development nowadays, and people are sitting up and taking notice and saying, we can get so much flavor in the spirit before it goes in the cask. We don't need to mature it for 10 years minimum. And a lot of these new distilleries have taken on board. So it's good to see, it's not just a new distillery thing. Guys like yourselves are taking that on board and saying, well, I wonder what happens if we do that, what we can do with that spirit and take out this release. Because obviously that's going to, that's not just an easy thing to pick up if you're putting peated spirit through your still, repeated malt through your stills, because you've then got all the cleaning to do, you've got all the turnaround from that, and that's a direct impact on your production as well. It's not, it's not just we'll just buy in another couple of stills for peated malt. It's a big project.
Yeah, but the funny thing is that the stills at GlenAllachie, they could run sort of like individually. They could be producing two completely different spirits at the same time. But Billy has decided, just to make sure there's no cross-contamination, everything is focused onto the right cuts and the right attention to the product, that when the Meikle Tòir is in production, when we're using peated malt, it's only peated malt that goes through the distillery. It's 6 to 8 weeks, and it's just full-on peated.
So do you have I was over working at Ardmore yesterday or the day before, I don't know. But they do, so winter is the non-peated production, the Ard layer, and then sort of spring into summer is your Ardmore. So do you have like a set calendar time when you do your Meikle Tòir, or is it kind of more demand led?
That's a good question. I think I will need to ask Juliet about that because obviously having been there for a year, I've only seen it happening once. So I'm not sure if it's a set time or it's just, set by the distillery manager when it's best to get the peated malt. So yeah, it's interesting. I will definitely ask. But I've seen that somebody was asking about finding the products in the US and Canada.
Yeah.
I remember how to switch on the chat because I was on the private chat. So now I can see it as well. But yeah, if you go onto the GlenAllachie website, there's distributor sort of section where to find us. And if you scroll onto the areas where you're looking for, it will say which distributors have the product, and you can get directly in touch with them and ask them where it's best to find the product. We also have it for the UK just to make it easier. So yeah, you'll find everything there, and it's all up to date. And
that's really handy. That's a great tool, because I don't have the answer to people when they ask me, where can you get Glengarry in the US? I'm like, I don't know. So that's great that you actually have that so people can just find it. Like, that's really simple but very handy.
You can get it here in the distillery.
Exactly. Here, in a whiskey shop, right there. It's definitely a great tool, and especially because we do work quite a lot on our social media. Nicole does a great job, sort of like showing what's happening and the new releases and all. We get that quite a lot, so it's good to have it all in the one place, because if I had to tell you on the top of my head the distributor somewhere, I'll be like, I have no clue. It's too many to count.
But yeah, I get asked all the time, I live in such and such a place in the US, or I live somewhere like this country, where can I buy it? I'm like, if I had that knowledge of like every store around the world that you could buy the whiskey, like, I would love to share that with you. And or people send me photographs of their bottles, and which I really love, because I love seeing old school bottles. And they're like, when was this distilled? What's the history of this bottle? How much is its value? I'm like, I wish I knew these things, but like, I've only been here for 7 years. I don't know. I just don't know the answer to these things. But I love people's faith in us for knowing this. Like, yeah, we try our best to have the information, but we can't have it all. Our brains are only so big.
It's a lot of information when you think about, distributors, places you've visited, and, different bottlings. I still carry some information from previous companies, which I will love to sort of like just wipe the hard drive and start from scratch, because I need to get new information. But I think I'm just getting old, and that's sort of like my limit storage. My iCloud is full, and now this is what I get.
I can't remember numbers. My brain will not let me. So people will say, oh my gosh, I bought, bottle, I got, 3632, like, I'm like, just, I don't, when did you buy it? What cask was that in? I don't know what bottle 3632 was. Like, just give me some more information. Like, I wish I remembered.
What was it?
I don't know. Talking of numbers, I've just poured this one, which I think went on to become a bit of a legendary release, 901037 cask. It's a sherry, but 13-year-old. It was a handful.
Oloroso or Pedro Jimenez?
Oloroso.
Oloroso. Nice.
But the GlenAllachie fans at home might recognise that. I don't have much left of it, but this one was, it is just a phenomenal dram. It's what I'll keep an eye out on secondary market and auctions for, if I can pick one up. But unfortunately, everyone knows about it, so it always goes for prices that are well above what I would be not willing, but afford to pay. Yeah.
Well, what was it about that one blew up? Like, oh, sorry, we're all talking over each other there. I was going to ask you, what was it about that one that made it so well, like, collectible? Like, did it win an award, or?
No, it's just so damn good.
Just really good. Okay.
One of these whiskies that, I mean, it's a sherry, but so Kat, you're going to be.
No, wait. So all if I have to, I like Oloroso, and you guys know that I loved the Kilchoman Fino. So like I am there is an inroad into sherry for me, but
different sherries, though. Very, very different sherries. I mean, I went into a dive of sherries last year because we released the sherry series, and I was like, you know what? Been talking about sherry for years, and I want to know everything that I can possibly no. And I went onto this European website, which is like, founded by the European Union, and they do like a course on sherries, and it was absolutely amazing. I've done the basic one. I've started the expert, and suddenly I didn't have the time to finish it. But the amount of information about sherry and the history, how it came to be, the selection, the different sort of like roles, because obviously when talking about wines, you're talking about a lot of different roles. It's amazing. And Fino is just something else, because there you're talking about almost like a white wine. It's just that fragrant, dry white wine that it's very easy drinking. You'll have it with tapas in a sunny day. You're talking about an Oloroso, a Pedro Ximénez. You're talking about a lot of oxidative maturation. So it's a completely different structure, different sort of like feeling, even with the maturation of the casks. And it's been interesting because obviously that there's something in between. And I've seen people loving the Amontillado, which was unbelievable. I liked it as well. I really like Amontillado wine. And it's just sort of like, I think that it's something that if you don't like, Pedro Ximénez or Oloroso as much, it could be a nice bridge. That's why I went into this long-winded explanation. But it could be a nice bridge because it does both biological and oxidative maturation. So it's just, the best of both worlds. And if you're really, really lucky, Palo Cortado, because that's, one of a kind. You can get just a handful of those.
It is one of a kind, but was there not like a little wee kind of glut of Palo Cortado casks on the go for a while? I was like, wait, aren't these like really rare, like one-off flukes? Like, why do we have so many releases of it? It was like just a year of the Palo Cortado cask.
That was like
Palo Cortado is originated from a mistake. It's when the floor breaks on an Oloroso, isn't it? It becomes a Palo Cortado.
Yeah.
It's more into the sort of like biological maturation. So it's Fino and Manzanilla that break almost like naturally, and by tasting it, they realize this is gone into a completely different direction.
Yeah.
Well,
Oloroso is doesn't have the floor layer, does it? The Manzanilla and the Fino does, and so it was destined. It was made as a Fino or a Manzanilla, but the floor is broken. So it's then kind of maturing like an Oloroso. So it's kind of in between. But I think it started off as a mistake, but then people started thinking, well, this mistake tastes good. So
it worked.
Oops. There's another floor layer gone. Let's
I mean,
somebody's in there like
they're complaining now. Also because of the pricing of Palo Cortado, if you have one between 1,000 casks, that's like a little treasure. But it's definitely worth the money. Definitely.
I mean, I loved Kilchoman Fino because I think the whole Fino kind of like dry white wine worked really well with that sort of grassy kind of macher, kind of dry peat smoke of Kilchoman. I just thought it was like a match made in heaven. But I was going to ask you, like, where did you get this course? Is this a paid course? Because I'm really interested in this course. Did you like sign up to it? Give you dates?
Yes, I'll send you over the link. I think it's called Sherry Academy, and it's on the Sherry Week website. We've taken part at the Sherry Week last year. That's how I found out, because it's been something that I wanted to do for a really long time because I love it. I love sherries, as obviously you've gathered in the past 15 minutes. And it's completely free because it's sponsored by the European Union. They basically want to get the knowledge back onto the people, because obviously, with almost like an entire category going into decay because people forgot about sherry, because we don't need to transport wine anymore, in the same way that they used to. And
Well, they're
it's
not
now
allowed to, are they?
Well, yeah.
They're not allowed to anymore because it used to all be transported, but now they said no, it has to be bottled in Spain. In Jerez.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and you would imagine why, also because because there's been a massive sherry boom in whiskey production, the sort of like the casks and all of that. There's also been a lot of casks, cooperages that have popped up that weren't sort of like using cherry wine. So they want to make sure that they're keeping the tradition going. It'll be like, sending down a tank of, single malt to Asia and then not knowing what's happened after it. If you make a quality product, you don't want that to happen. That's why we bottle in Scotland. That's why we bottle in Jerez, for example, with the sherries. And I totally understand that. But it was sort of like very romantic when they were moving casks around, and this wine that stayed on a boat for 40 days was arriving onto the coast of England to be enjoyed by the English, and then the casks were sort of like ending up in distilleries. So yeah, it's definitely something very, very interesting. And also it's interesting how the location of Cadiz, of Jerez, is sort of like fundamental for how they've managed to bring the product into the world. And that's why it's changed so much. So yeah, definitely highly recommend. I could talk about it for hours, and that is my next.
Send me the deets. I'm definitely signing up to that.
Will do.
Thanks, Oz. Sounds amazing. I do love a good sherry as well. And Russell and I had a guest on when Russell was co-hosting with me, Annie Manson, who is got a link to Glengarry.
Wait. Why are we dropping the Russell bomb when Annie's more linked to me than Russell? Sorry, Russell. Like, loving everything.
Because you weren't hosting at the time.
Annie is a big sherry. Like, I don't know, what would you call it? Like, what's the, I've just forgotten the word for a wine. Yeah. So is that the same word for a sherry expert, a sommelier?
I'm not entirely sure. I think there is a selection of people in the UK on that website, but I don't remember the exact name that is given to it. But I would imagine sherry experts or sommelier. I'll double check. Keep on going. I'll be back.
But
Annie is a descendant of the founders of Glengarry Distillery, and she went over to Spain on holiday originally, and then fell in love with the place and stayed, and now does food and cooking courses and a sherry class. And
nice.
I remember just talking to her about it on a Blether. It just made me want to drink all the sherry in the world. It was just all of it. Yeah.
Did you not tell me she makes a jar of like dried fruit on a bar that's just she soaks in sherry? It
just keeps topping it up. It's
amazing.
It's just I think it's such an underrated and underappreciated drink, and I worry that
it's cheap as well. It's a cheap drink. Like, it's a really good quality, cheap, like nice kind of aperitif cheese board complement, like just nice wine.
Also, you can keep it in the fridge for a very long time if you don't smash the bottle right away.
Also, another good point.
I found out,
bottles, guys. The drink lasts longer if you don't smash the bottle. I feel like there's a story here.
No, I mean, it was summer, bought a Fino, bought an Amontillado. I just wanted to do the whole tasting thing. And I ended up with 3 different bottles of sherry in the house. And it's just me and my partner. So it was just like, what are we going to do with this? And, as I went on through the course, I was reading, it can last up to 3 weeks in the fridge. And I was like, actually, let's try it. And so I went on tasting it as it was changing over in the fridge. And, after a few weeks, it still tastes amazing. And, for a couple that doesn't get through like an entire bottle of wine for an aperitif, especially during the summer, we're just like, this is perfect. We can have a glass of sherry, some nice cheese for me. He cannot have it, and he can have whatever he wants. But the most important thing is the sherry. I was having a look, and they're actually called sherry educators, and I think that probably Andy's listed here as well. But yeah, what I'll do is I'll send over onto the chat the website, so everybody can have a look at it.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. That'd be very good, because it is like, it's a slight bugbear of mine that, not bugbear, but like, I don't know, there's a couple of things that annoy me in life. One is people who mispronounce Islay, and the other is people who are like really big sherry heads with whiskey, but don't know what sherry is. Like, I'm like,
yeah, I was going to say that it's about, I think it's a whiskey created problem that people only know Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez, and they maybe don't know what flavors to expect from any other sherry.
Yeah, the extent of it.
Yeah, I think we've lost Kat. She's frozen a little bit mid-rant. So
Oh.
we'll jump in. But
I'm sure she's still going.
She maybe is. Yeah, I hope she is. I hope in her own little screen she is like ranting away. But yeah, I think, Russell and I were drinking, well, and I quite like a Fino and tonic.
I love that,
something nice and refreshing, a great alternative to gin and tonic.
So low ABV, so
yeah, it's nice and fresh and crisp and dry. And I think people should drink more sherry. I think we've grown up thinking that sherry is what Granny takes out at Christmas, and we have a wee tot of it, and it's that cream sherry that's really sweet. And there is a place for that, but guys, go out and discover Fino, Manzanilla, Amontillado. Just go out and, and not even the whiskey, try the drink itself, because it's relatively cheap. Comes in small bottles. You normally get a half bottle for £12 or something, £15.
Yeah, very reasonable.
And try that, and even better, pair it alongside a whiskey that has been matured in that cask. That's great fun to do.
Yeah, we've done some tastings with it, and we sort of like wanted to showcase the liquid next to the whiskey that was double matured in or finished in these casks. And they went down really well. People are really surprised, especially as we were saying with Kat, with the biological matured one. It's just fun, and it's, sort of like educational, but, still into your entertainment kind of sphere. And I've sent you over the links, which you can share onto the big chat, because apparently I'm not allowed to be in.
Oh.
I've been kicked out. So yeah, I must have overused it over the years. But I was reading Russell that he was saying that it was drinking sherry and antipasti that night. So tapas, that wasn't too bad. Wish I was invited to that.
Yeah, that was our Blether night. That was the night with Annie that we had. So we do the Highland Whisky Academy, which is a week-long course that we run, and one of the evenings is a sherry dinner, where we have a 7-course dinner paired with sherry. So Annie came and ran that for a couple of years for us. Obviously, we can't fly her over from Spain, especially, but when she's in the country, she comes and runs that. So me and Russell knew what to expect on that chat, so we were prepared with antipasti, olives and meats and dates stuffed with blue cheese alongside a sherry is just the best combination you can dream of.
You wouldn't think about dates and blue cheese, but when you get it with the right sherry next to it, you're just like to absolute perfection. The sweetness, the sort of like the tinginess of the blue cheese, the creaminess is to die for. It
blows your mind. And I remember when we were sitting having a chat about it, like a pre-course meeting with Annie, and she was telling us these things, and we were like, that just doesn't sound nice at all. But my God, it's
solid. Basically, a date is solid chutney. What can go wrong?
We're talking about Russell a wee bit because of the sherry leg, but he did have a question I wanted to jump back to.
I was reading that he made a velvet old fashioned with PX sherry.
Oh,
that sounds like a dream drink.
That does.
End of the night, probably, but
yeah. I remember doing a tasting. It was with it was Macallan, and they did a pairing and they did cocktails, and every one of them had a wee splash of sherry in it, and it improved the liquid so much. Go back to Russell's question. Was a wee while ago, Russell. Sorry to keep you waiting. He asked it when we were talking about you guys having your team meetings, and he's asking, was the rebrand part of was it customer feedback, or was that a decision from a team meeting? Was it where did the rebrand come from? Because
to be fair, that was before my time.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's difficult for me to answer that, but I can tell you that people absolutely loved the old label. When we came out with the new label, which I absolutely love because I love the sort of like the colors, and it's just made it so much better on the shelves and so well aligned with the Meikle Tòir. People were completely heartbroken. I still get people at festivals that they're just like, why did you change the bottle? And I'm like, I mean, after 7 years, it's probably a good time to sort of like reshuffle things, to change it. And also I think that, although with the previous one, there were a lot of elements that sort of like came together, and a graphic designer pointed to me that even the font that was used for the GlenAllachie, the branding, was called Rock something. So everything was, Valley of the Rock. Everything was about the name of GlenAllachie. So it really came together. Yes,
the old font, and in many a tasting we had at the shop as well, that people kind of thought either, if we're going back to Harry Potter, remind them Harry Potter or the Flintstones was the two that stood out. And but I like it because it was fun, it was new, it was it caught people's attention. The new one. And I'll admit, there's a few times when Ben Romick did it, Ben Reith did it, Glendronach have kind of rebranded as well. On paper, I'm not a fan, but see when you have it in your hand and you see it physically, and side by side with the full range, it does look. There's just an element of class about it now.
I totally agree with you. I think it's more sort of like linear with the whole of the portfolio, with the whole of the production of the distillery. And, if you think about it, that was created for one product at the beginning. So obviously everything sort of like was generated after that, and it sort of like came together after. But this one was obviously a bigger study of the products, the visibility that they wanted. So we'll ask the question to marketing. I will ask what sort of like was the driving force around that. But that is my take. So just seeing and hearing what's been happening and how people have perceived it and seen it. Oh, the cat is back.
Hello. That's a Kevin Wilson. Have you ever heard Kevin Bloody Wilson? That's a song that he sings.
Yeah,
that Bloody Cat's back.
The Australian guy. I know. I've just been to go around all my children and be like, okay, get off the internet, off the internet, off the internet. Honestly. And then I thought, well, I'm having a bit of a break, so I'll go for a pee as well. Too much information there, guys. But I thought just kill two birds with one stone.
Very, very, very used.
My internet is rubbish, and I have spoken to BT about this, so somebody is coming out to do something about it, but that's a really boring story. So sorry I missed all of that there, guys.
You really confused me just for a second there, because I have an auntie called BT. And I was like, what? Why would you? What did you speak to my
I'm going
auntie
to
about?
see Mike Auntie Beatty about my. That is such an Aberdeenshire thing to have. My Auntie Beatty.
Is it like an abbreviation of name and middle
Beatrice.
name?
Beatrice.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, we all call her Beatty.
First time I came across it.
Yeah, Aberdeenshire people, I don't know, Aberdeenshire, it's very unique. We take names, nice names, and we shorten them to something really not as nice. Like Alexander becomes Sandy, and Alexandra becomes Beldy, and Beatrice becomes Beatty. Like,
Get it. Yeah, because I came across quite a few Sandys, so I'm getting the sort of like the gist of it. Get it.
I think it's because we just recycle names because it's like family names. Like, once you've got a family name, you've got to keep reusing it. But because that gets really confusing, we've just changed it into something else, I think. So yeah. Or Doddy, George becomes Doddy, which I find very weird. Or Alexandra becomes Doddy, which anyway, that's a completely different story. I'm back.
It's interesting. I'm gonna read into the history of that because I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, I've never heard of a Sandy called Doddy. George has always been Dodd or Doddy.
Yeah, no, I said George becomes Doddy, but Alexander becomes George becomes Doddy, which I don't even get. How do you go from George to Dodd? Like that's
completely different.
But no, Alexander and Sandy, how's that happened? That's really different.
Sander, Sandy.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, because if you go north, like sort of Caithness, Sutherland, Orkney, Shetland, Alexander becomes Xander. So yeah, you're probably right. That's probably where it's come from, actually. Never thought of that.
What would Antea be in Doric? What would we
Go on. Tell me.
So is that an Italian name? Because it's not what I've come across. It's not Italian. Greek. It's Greek.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because just as an aside, I was pals with this Italian guy, and I mentioned that there's loads of people in whiskey that are Italian, and I was talking about you. He's like, "That's not an Italian name." I'm like, "Well, okay, but she is Italian."
Like, there's a lot of other nationality, but I wouldn't disguise myself as an Italian for no reason. I'm gonna break it.
I was like, she's not making it up. She really is Italian. But that's quite a Scottish. It's such a Scottish thing, though, because like Scottish people will say, "Oh, they'll see your last name. They'll say, "Well, that's not Scottish." And I think it's quite an Italian thing as well. It's like, "Oh, well, that's not an Italian name." It's like, well, it might not be, but she's Italian.
Yeah, it's definitely atypical because in Catholic country you will have very Catholic names, and I think that my mom was in the wave of that. Well, in the wave of change way before everybody else came on board. So yes, it's always been very, very interesting. But weird enough, Free Antea in 12,000 people village in Italy. That happened. So I think we were sort of like opening up a trend for people.
Oh, that's interesting.
But yeah.
It's a beautiful name. It's a beautiful name. Does it have like a meaning? Like, because I know a lot of European names have got like a meaning attached to them. Not so much the UK, but some European.
I'm guessing it comes from Anthea, or is Anthea the English version of it, or is Anthea Greek? Was it an?
Yeah. So basically, it's very tragic, very, very tragic, as you would imagine. Part of the Greek history. It's like a princess that fell in love with a soldier, and ultimately she got him killed because he didn't want to betray the country and kill the king. So
okay,
very heartbreaking. So yeah, not following that path. But I was reading I think it was James that was asking about the turbo.
James is asking. Oh, the Meikle Tòir Turbo. Yeah, he's asking if you've got any tips on how to get a hold of one, because that is the one, isn't it? That's the
that's the
Holy Grail.
very, very limited edition that we do every year. So yeah, it is tough. Obviously, if you have your favorite retailer, you can buy loads of Meikle Tòir and be in the favorite, because obviously we decide, how many cases are going to each retailer depending by how much Meikle Tòir has been sold over the year. So help them out. I'm pretty sure they'll help them out. They'll help you out. But yeah, obviously the Turbo is one of a kind, very heavily peated, 70 ppm in the glass, the second edition that we released, the 2024. So definitely different from the other three in the range. But if you like the Turbo and you like the sweeter kind of note, you have all of that into the sherry one. If you like that sort of like edgy smokiness, the chinkapin is your one. So you can find something in between your bottle of Turbo until you manage to get one.
Do you think it's really popular because it's limited, or is it one of these that people want to? There probably will be a percentage of people who just want it because it's limited and think, well, we could sell that later because people will pay for it. It's a sad truth that people would do that, but
yeah, I mean, I don't think I've seen that many on the secondary market because it's so limited. But I think it's probably down to the fact that when the Meikle Tòir range was released, also was the Turbo. So the people that were into the GlenAllachie sphere and were following, they managed to get a bottle. They've managed to try it and, decide for themselves if they wanted to buy it or not. And after that was just word of mouth. People heard about this mythical, heavily peated Speyside whiskey, and haven't come across yet because it's so limited. So I think it's down to the fact, one, that is an amazing liquid. It's intense, but it's balanced. Honestly, it's everything that you want. It's got sherry, it's got freshness, it's got smokiness. Unbelievable. A higher ABV as well, limited, and yeah, it's called the Turbo. I mean, if you're looking for something peated, you hear the Turbo. I want that. That's pretty much right up my street. And funny enough, I'm just looking in the reflection of the window because we just got a massive Meikle Tòir Turbo sticker, and I put it at the back of my laptop. So my entire laptop says Meikle Tòir Turbo. But I don't have a bottle in the house, unfortunately.
Nice.
I feel like it should be like you should be sponsoring like a rally car with a name like that. It's quite iconic.
Don't know if you're still allowed to sponsor cars with the.
You probably can't sponsor them, but a lot of them seem to have like affiliations with car brands, don't they? You've got like Bentley with Macallan and Bowmore with
Aston Martin. Yeah.
It's funny you were talking about like so this kind of folklore that seems to, or urban legends that seem to grow up around about like releases. It's weird how like a rumor mill will grow. Like somebody will post something on Facebook or Instagram like, oh, I heard that it's limited because of this reason, and then it just grows arms and legs. This amazing story kind of circulates behind it, and then it just kind of becomes like this go-to bottle that people have to have because of these, which I think is fun as well, because it like doesn't hurt really.
I mean, I think that obviously it's always fun when that happens, when there's a very limited edition whiskey. And I came across some, and some friends were like, oh, let's open it, let's drink it together, and you actually get to taste it rather than sort of like treasure it like the bottle that you'll bring on a desert island. And it's also because the way that Meikle Tòir Turbo is made is completely different from anything I came across. So I've got a little help here because it's very technical. But our normal production goes from well, obviously the distillation side of things in the spirit still. The cut is 74% to 62.5. Well, for the turbo with the peated production, because the most peated part is at the end of the distillation, most phenolic part, we go a little bit over. So the turbo is only from 61 to 58% alcohol. So it's that little part, which is like 250 liters, that gets collected once a week or so for the 6 weeks that we're in production. And then that becomes the turbo. And probably if we were to take more than that, it would impact the ppm in the overall Meikle Tòir. If, we were not to take it, it will be higher ppm in the regular Meikle Tòir. Who knows? Most probably. But yeah, it's that little technicality. Is that, why don't we try to do that? Is that sort of like, little weird thought that you have at night before going to bed? It's like, oh, I wonder how it tastes like. And he actually done it.
So you're like cutting quite low into the tails with that one, which gives it that kind of uniqueness, I guess, like that kind of heavy kind of peatiness and funkiness at the bottom of the run.
Yes, but because it's such a long fermentation, you don't get any sort of like faintiness. So it's not funky at all. You still get sort of like bits of sweetness, and you get the big intense smokiness of it, which it couldn't have been done any other way, I think.
I've never tried it actually, but I think it's because it always sells out so quick whenever it comes in store.
I was lucky enough to be up at the launch of the Meikle Tòir range. I was driving at the time, but I got a tasting pack away with me. So it's a really good. I mean, it's a great range. The turbos probably stand out because it's that big punchy sherry smoke, and it's a slightly different style of smoke as well from the other three due to that cut points. I think peat is such a fascination of mine, peated whiskey, and and I think you probably kicked it off, Antea, when you're talking about when we were doing one of the Kilchoman tastings at the shop and talking about how important the cut points is to the flavour of peat that comes over. And it was then I realised that Kilchoman is the same ppm as Laphroaig, I think, isn't it?
Ardbeg.
In Ardbeg.
Yeah, 50 ppm at the level of the barley, the peated barley. And round about 25, 30, if I don't remember wrong, in the actual liquid. So quite a bit lower. Because obviously of this sort of like very low cut, if I don't mistake it, is 62.5. So very, very low in comparison to what we do, which is like 58%, which is taking the smokier part into the new make.
It's great because people look at numbers, and Kat, you were saying right at the start you're not great with numbers, but people look at a number because that's what they have to go on, and they judge ppm. That's how peaty it is, and the higher that number, the smokier the whiskey. And it's not always the case. You look at Octomore, some of these guys are really malty and crisp, but you look at Laphroaig and it's really much medicinal. And it just blows your mind.
As the palate as well, though, if you're going lower down into tails, you're taking more of those like oils and things to do as well.
Things like that as well.
Yeah. So it depends what you're looking for in the. Yeah, so you go for a heavy peat, but like maybe like that sort of kind of light, kind of copper contact kind of fruits and things, or you can go right down into the sort of heavy oils and stuff. So I guess it's like all where you want to sit, like what you want your palate to be in your characters. It's really interesting.
Exactly. It is really interesting. And then obviously we're not going to get into it because obviously otherwise we can talk for the entire evening. But there's also very different type of peat. Been reading a book just about peat, and if it's been sort of like in contact with water, you're going to have a completely different taste. The provenance of the peat is a massive sort of flavor indicator of where it's coming from and all of that. So it's also great to talk about different kind of peats, and there's so many different sort of like points. It's almost like, yes, you're adding an ingredient onto a single malt, but you're changing the entire dynamic of what you're creating because of these ingredients, because it can change so much, because it can be so medicinal, or it can be very herbal and grassy. So it just gets you into completely different sort of like spectrum of flavors. And also, if you think about the stills, you get like completely different cut point, thinking about if you have like a bigger, taller still, or if you have like a lower still, because obviously the fumes, the vapors will be going up a lot quicker. So plenty of different things. But one thing that I think that we got spot on onto the Meikle Tòir range is to talk about the ppm rather than in the malting stage. Let's talk about the ppm in the liquid. So it's 35 ppm in the glass. So like that, you're just taking away that sort of like biased thinking of, I'm buying something that has 70 ppm, but actually the cut point was really low, so I'm not getting as much, or the cut point was really light, so I'm getting a big one. So that way you know what you're getting into the glass. And the perception can change depending by the maturation, the double maturation that we've done, but we try to explain it as much as possible. And it's fun how peat can be so interesting when you do a sherry maturation, and the sherry hides completely when you get bourbon, and you get like the sort of like smokiness coming right through and just punching you in the face. And this one was obviously the most different one, that sort of like shocked a little bit because of the flavor that it brings with it, which is again the chinkapin. And they're all pretty high ABV, with 48% for the sherry and the chinkapin, and the original one is 50%. So it's very sort of like good quality, very reasonable price, and you get that higher ABV as well.
Yeah, that's good. Jeremy's on Facebook, and I was going to ask something similar actually, Jeremy, but complete opposite. He said, has anyone done a tasting pack with different types of peat but the same distillation and cut points? And I was going to say, wouldn't it be fun if somebody did a tasting pack using the same peat but at different cut points to show?
I think Jeremy
that tasting pack. Sorry, Kat, go on.
Oh no, sorry. I was just saying, Jeremy's saying Kilchoman did a tasting pack with different cut points, which was interesting.
Okay, so that has been done. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Yeah.
I think I've still got some samples of that. That was a very, very interesting sort of like tasting, seeing how much smokiness you get in the different sort of like time of the distillation, as well as how the new make behaves as well. You're getting more sort of like volatile esters at the beginning, more sort of like alcohol at the beginning as well. And then you're moving into this sort of like creamier, more body. And then towards the end, you're getting more of that sort of like smokiness, of course. But we've done a very nice sort of like graph of how the phenol sort of like move around in the distillation. Just obviously to explain this dance that happens in the still. And it's interesting because you'll think that it's almost like linear, but because it's such a heavy component of the wash, it just takes much longer to reach the swan neck. It just gets away with sort of like higher temperature. So it's very interesting to see how people thought about peat getting into their glass, sort of like how they pictured it, and how sort of like we break that sort of like dream of that lovely smokiness getting into their glass and go into the technicality.
It's the romance of the Islay water, isn't it? And I think, I don't know if you get this as well, Antea, but to me, it's one of the biggest misconceptions that I'm having to correct people with in a non-arsey way. But so many people think the peat comes from the water source, and not just people from around the world, Scottish people.
Yeah.
So
I had one this weekend. I did a tasting this weekend, and we're talking about peat, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, it comes from the water." And well,
were they Scottish?
No. Yeah.
It's mainly Scottish people, I think.
Yeah,
I think it's branding and marketing that has done it, because even the legendary Bessie Williamson from Lefroy used to talk about the peated water in Islay, and of course that is a factor. The water definitely is a factor. Terroir is a factor, but not to the extent that you're getting in your glass. But
I
yeah,
think that
definitely
was like the conversation in the sort of like late 2000, that sort of like led that big sort of like misconception of water being leading of the flavor, especially with peat. I think also, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Scottish are very proud of their water for all the right reason. So I think there was a lot of conversation about water at some point. So people were like, it must be the water. But no, jokes apart, it's still sort of like one of these topics that people sort of like believe that if the liquid is dark, so that equals a peated whiskey.
100%.
100%.
And the water. Do you know why that is? It's because if you have lived in an area with peated water, if you go for a bath, your bath will be orange. So automatically people think, oh, dark color equals peated water. And I totally see where they're coming from.
I get it. Yeah. But yeah. No, but I think that, it's nice that people, are sort of like open and tasting, and, it's good that, they still sort of like try to guess it, and they can learn from it. And it's a thing that, I like about more sort of like smaller tastings. You can get to talk to people, and even the shyer ones, they're like, but let me ask you. So it's that sort of like element of learning that we can bring through without any judgment, of course, because it's a very difficult subject. We're talking about ingredients, we're talking about distillation, we're talking about foods, we're talking about maturation. There's a lot that goes on into whiskey, and it's nice to go there with an open mind and ask as many questions as possible. I know that in the chat there's like very well seasoned drinkers that know a lot about their whiskey, but if they have friends that they're just starting and may make some sort of like second guesses about where the smoke comes from.
Well, this is the other thing. Scottish people are expected to know about whiskey. You're Scottish, you should understand. But what we're making, it's like a lot of what we're doing, it's chemistry. Like, we're still learning. Like, a lot of distillation, I still don't understand. Like, we definitely don't need to know all of this. Like, you shouldn't be an expert in this, because, like, unless you work in the industry, we're all still learning on that. But it is a misconception that that we should understand exactly how this is all happening.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing. It's kind of flavors that you want to know. If you're going to find out, you're going to find out. But it's not something you sit in the bar and think, I like a Lefroy. Why do I like a Lefroy? I wonder where that Peat got. I wonder where that comes from. It's unless you're like really interested in it, you're not going to go and find out. And you'll listen to a romantic advert or a poem or something. And think, I like that idea. I'm going to stick with that idea, and that's what. Or you'll think something up yourself. But unless you have the willingness and the eagerness and the geekery, like probably a lot of the guys in the chat do, to go and find out these things, Joe Public is more interested in, having a chill out, a nice sit back, enjoy a dram. I like that flavour. That's the kind of whiskey I'm going for.
Yeah.
And I don't care where it comes from.
Well, yeah, that's true as well. Like, you don't sit there with a variety of chocolate bars, go through which one is your favourite and say, why do I like the Galaxy more than I like the Cadbury? Like, you don't go into the science.
That's exactly the reason why I keep samples without a label and then I drink them. Exactly the same reason.
I have no idea what I'm drinking, but I'm going to have it anyway.
I like it anyway.
So many of
I
those
just
samples.
wanted to mention there's a big name in the chat, and it's Ian Allen. So
I know Ian is actually on next week. And wait, correct me if I'm wrong. You're on next week, right, Ian? Because I've literally got you in my diary as next week. We are chatting with Ian next week, unless I've messed this up. This is correct, right?
Yes.
But yeah,
I think 27th is next week. Yeah, he's on next week.
Yeah, nice to see you on the chat, Ian.
Well, guys, I just wanted to say I will probably need to get some dinner. So
it's been fantastic.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know.
Some of the guys are saying they're going to catch up later. Ian is coming on to do some research, he's saying. That's why he's on. You're talking about labels or no labels in a bottle. This is something that's been sitting on my desk, and it's clear, and it smells like whiskey, but it's been labelled as a 7-year-old Colila in an octave Pedro Jimenez finish. I have no idea.
The chances are very low that is an octave of Pedro Jimenez.
Absolutely.
Unless it's been carbon filtered, I wouldn't see that happening.
No, I have no idea what is in here.
But you're still going to crack into it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are so grateful that we've got you before you've jetted off to Europe, back into your main role. So thank you so much for giving us your time. And not everybody saw before the start, but you've literally fed all your pets and not fed yourself. So thank you so much for giving us your time.
It's always them first. No, it's been lovely seeing you guys again, because I haven't been in the brewery for quite some time. But next time that I'm going to be coming up north, I'll definitely make a pit stop and because it's been way overdue. And thanks very much. And hope to see you soon. And thanks very much for all the questions in the chat, for everybody that followed along up to now, to 2 hours and 3 minutes.
It's been
I think we've beaten our last chat with you.
100%. And for everybody, the questions that we've not managed to get to, fire them in, and we'll maybe pop them to you, Antea. And if there's anything we've missed, you can maybe post it back retrospectively, as Mike likes to say. There's been a lot of chats. It's been hard to keep up because a lot of you guys are chatting to each other. And if we've missed some questions, then I'm sorry about that, but we'll definitely get them answered at some point.
Yeah, we'll get the answer.
Thank you so much.
Quick shout out to Dave Fowley, who was talking about Torraveg on Sky. And I love how somebody goes to Sky and asks for a local dram that is unpeated. I just don't think it exists. But there you go, Dave. Misty Isle Distilleries, that's your first course of action, is make an unpeated Isle of Skye dram. We'll be in touch, Dave, and it would be great to get you on the Blether, and we could talk about all the
100%.
The exciting things that you guys are doing.
Yeah, I think we do follow each other on socials, so ping me a message and we'll get something started and we'll get you on the chat. You know how to find me.
100%.
So guys, thank you so much. good night to everyone who's been watching. Ian, we will see you next week. Ian Allen from Glenmurray, legend that he is. With the pleasure of having Ian on in the shop doing a tasting a couple of weeks ago. So that's going to be great. Ross, you're too late with your questions, Ross. I'm sorry. What we'll do is we'll jump on afterwards and answer some questions afterwards. So good night. See you soon.
Grazie, Antea. Ciao.
Thank you very much.
Ciao.